I just finished watching the latest movie in the Conjuring Universe and the sequel to the highest grossing movie in that universe, The Nun II. And of course, as I do with all my reviews, I want to let you guys know whether or not I think this is something that you should spend your time and money seeing in theaters. So I'm going to give you a little bit of information about the movie, who made it, what it's about. Then we'll go into the pros and cons. And finally, I'll let you know who I think this movie is for, if anyone. If that kind of thing sounds cool to you and you want to keep up to speed on all the new big movies that are coming out in theaters, make sure you subscribe. The Nun Part 2 takes place in 1956 in France, 4 years after the events of the first movie. There, a priest is murdered, and evil is spreading, and Sister Irene has to come face to face yet again with the demon Valak. The Nun II is directed by Michael Chaves, who most recently directed the third Conjuring movie, and previously directed The Curse of La Llorona. Much like the first Nun movie, this one stars Taissa Farmiga, and if that last name sounds familiar, she of course is the real-life younger sister of Vera Farmiga, who plays Lorraine Warren in the other Conjuring movies. Also returning is Jonas Bloquet. He played Frenchie in the first movie, and joining them is the young actress Storm Reid, who you might know from playing Riley in the Last of Us series. So starting off with my pros, if you're wondering whether or not The Nun II is better than the original, you can relax. It is by a long shot. But of course, in my opinion, the original Nun movie is probably the worst in the entire franchise, so that wasn't necessarily a large hurdle for this one to clear. And since he's only directed 3 movies so far, I can't quite say whether or not Michael Chaves, the director, is getting better, but I can definitely say that this movie is way better directed than his debut with The Curse of La Llorona. So it feels like he's starting to get into the swing of things, and I'm really curious to see where he goes from here. With that said, I do like some of his directing choices in this movie. Some of the shots were really interesting. There are also some unique and creative scares, a few of which you see in the trailer, so I would recommend avoiding the trailer if you can. The movie kicks right off with some absolutely brutal scenes, so it kind of lets you know that this isn't just your run-of-the-mill exorcism movie or just some low-level demon that they're dealing with. I won't say exactly what they did, but there were definitely a couple scenes early on in the movie that had me shocked. And I specifically remember thinking, oh, okay, we're going for it here. You know, a lot of what the kids would call mid-horror movies really rely heavily on jump scares, which don't get me started on because I will go on a rant about how that's not real horror, but so many movies rely on those, including the original Nun. But what I appreciate about this movie is, in addition to those jump scares, there are a number of legitimately frightening scenes. They do a really great job of building tension. They'll straight up show you whatever the frightening thing is sitting in the corner of the room and just let your anxiety build in the moment, just knowing that something horrible is about to happen. There's also a certain type of dread that you feel in certain scenes where you're not sure if what the character is experiencing is real, or if it's a dream or a psychic premonition, or if it's the demon playing tricks on them. There's really a whole buffet of different flavors of horror in this movie. The cast is also really strong. Farmiga and Bloquet really carry a lot of the tension and the emotional weight in the movie, and they really get to let their talent shine through. I also appreciate that despite the fact that there are a lot of kid actors in this movie, they're not complete idiots. And if you've seen The Curse of La Llorona, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Those kids were not very bright. Overall, there's a lot that I like about this movie, but it's not without its faults. But before we get into that, I want to let you know that this video is sponsored by you. That's right, just by watching the video, you're really helping me out. Of course, if you like what I'm doing here, do me a solid and click the little like button below the video. I'd also appreciate it if you just let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Are you interested in seeing The Nun Part 2? What are your thoughts on the Conjuring universe as a whole? Whatever you think, just let me know in the comments. And of course, if you want to keep up to speed on all the new big movies that are coming out, you probably want to subscribe. But for now, let's get into the cons. And you know, a big part of my issue with these kind of spin-off prequels is that we already know that the character of the nun is in the other Conjuring movies. And most of those movies take place 20 years into the future. So whatever happens to them at the end of this movie, you know they're going to be back. And that kind of blunts a bit of the intrigue. Aside from that, and despite the fact that this is a massive improvement over the original movie, there are still a number of plot and story elements that I had a bit of trouble with. For one, there is a bunch of just blatant exposition that goes on in this movie. There's, in fact, a scene, and this is not the only scene, but there's one where a random side character is telling a group of kids pretty much the exact story of what happened in the first Nun movie. And there's no reason for it in this movie other than to let you, the audience, know what happened if you haven't seen the first movie or if you just don't remember it. They also set up some plot points really early on in the movie, just certain concepts, ideas, and you know immediately that that is exactly what they're going to end up doing to defeat the demon. So then you just find yourself watching the movie and waiting for the characters to figure out what you already know. And I feel like if we had paid more time and attention to the script, they would have been able to still have those same points, but in a way that we didn't pick up on immediately. There's also a point in the movie where it kind of becomes this action adventure-y, almost Indiana Jones searching for the Ark of the Covenant kind of film, which, you know, isn't necessarily a bad thing, but that's not what we were sold when we went in to watch this movie. You know, if this was sold as a more action adventure, treasure hunting, Ghostbusters style movie, then that would be great. But that's not what it is. So it was a little jarring. A couple other pet peeves of mine are, one, that there are a number of scenes when characters take hits that should straight up kill them or at least put them in a coma for a very long time. And then a couple minutes later, they're running around as if nothing happened. And I know that's just a movie thing that happens, but I just wish that they would be more realistic with how much damage the human skull can take. But again, that's just a pet peeve. And along the line of pet peeves, one other thing with these movies is that I'm always wondering, with all these demons walking the earth and causing chaos and getting into trouble, where is God? Like, it really feels like something he should be handling, or at least more involved in. So I don't know, that's just maybe a question I would like to see answered in some of these movies. What's he been up to this whole time? All in all though, I think The Nun II is miles better than the original. It still isn't what I would consider to be one of the great Conjuring Universe movies, but if you're into the franchise, I think you're gonna get some enjoyment out of this one. Of course, I don't think The Nun II is gonna convert any non-believers. So if that's you, you may just wanna skip this one, or at least wait for it to come out on streaming. Of course, if you want to know exactly where The Nun II falls in my overall Conjuring ranking, I'll have an updated Conjuring Universe ranking up in the next couple days, and I'll link to it over here as soon as it's live. So if you want to see that, or if you just want to keep up to speed on all the new big movies coming out in theaters, make sure you subscribe. All right, I'll catch you in the next one. Be good.